if someone comes back and says, hey, this logo is copied from this particular type of images in the last 10 years, is that a possibility? I think you mentioned that typically it is not, but should I be okay?
So I'm not going to give any legal advice.
100%. Yeah. No, this is not the
during
forum.
this webinar. But a couple of interesting points that you mentioned, like using AI for ideation, like finding new names and helping you think more broadly. That may be like a safer use of AI. Some like light editing, especially for grammatical things and structural things, that might be on the safer side, even if you're publishing it. Generating your logo, well, yeah, that's more problematic because then we're getting into, is that infringing anyone's trademark or copyright?
So 6 o'clock. So we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining. Special thanks to Joy for taking the time to share your thoughts on generative AI and its impact from the point of view from a legal person, right? So I'm a technology person, so I look at it from a different aspect and perspective. And so what we want to hear from you is today is what do you see the impacts and all. But before getting into that, let me just kickstart our discussion over here. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and let me know if you are able to see my screen. Are you able to see my screen, everyone? Okay, good.
Yes.
So today is our 28th episode of Generative AI in Enterprise. My initiative is Curious Circuits. So that is the channel that I publish on the content in LinkedIn, YouTube, and other mediums. And today our speaker is Joy Butler, Generative AI and Law. It's the topic of discussion. So being said that, I'll just do the quick regular stuff, which is the welcome introduction, topic of the day, interactive Q&A session. So that is our agenda. So we'll do a quick round of introduction. We'll do the disclaimer, housekeeping, participant introduction, and move on. So from an introduction perspective, those who do not know me, I'm Ujjwal Bhattacharjee. I live in New Jersey. I work in the financial industry, in the IT space, working in this industry for almost 20 years. I started this group, the podcast series or the meetup group back in December, just for curiosity. And so that's where the name Curious Circuits comes in. So that's me, pretty much it. So today is our 28th episode. Disclaimer, this session is solely my own initiative, nothing to do with my employer. So views or positions, strategies or opinions is not my current employer's, it's my own. This session is being recorded, photographed, and our meetups will be shared in social media and YouTube and other platforms. So by joining, you consent of being recorded and agree that these recordings may be used to promote this community. Also, if you're concerned about appearing in these recordings or have confidential information IP to protect, please let us know. Basically, the point is like you do not want to get into IP issues and all, right? So this is a typical statement that I put together so that we do not run into all these things. And I'm not a lawyer. In fact, Joy, you can help me over here to make this better.
I was going to say, this is just so close to my heart, seeing this up here like that.
Good. So the point over here is like, feel free to participate. And, but again, like if you're concerned, you can also use the chat. So that way, at least we'll have the question and answer going on. Housekeeping, very, very basic, like microphone, if you can be on mute. So that's great. Camera is optional, but we'd like to see you. So it's up to you. Raise your hand if you have any questions. Use the chat function. Also, feel free to stop and ask questions. So that way, it's like very interactive. We'll try to wrap it up by 40 minutes, and then we'll open for more open-ended questions. That's pretty much it. Audience intro. So I'll stop sharing my screen. We'll just go around across the board over here to do our audience intro. Again, you have the choice to say, not to say anything. I'll go to the next person. So I'll start with Joy. I'll keep you later because you're our guest speaker. So I'll start with Jeremy. One line.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I'm a digital media specialist living outside the Philadelphia area, and my interest in the topic is as both a composer, writer, production person, as well as a technologist on the technology side.
Awesome. Hetal. Ji Yeon Kim. I think Hetal got disconnected. Vidur, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Veg. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. So Hetal, go ahead. If you want to just say one line about your.
Hi everyone. I'm Hetal Patel. I joined this out of curiosity. Actually, I'm on disability leave, and I was just getting so bored, and I wanted to learn something different other than my own subject. I'm biologist. I'm a hardcore biologist. I work as a scientist at GSK, and this is like completely new out of my expertise, and I'm really curious to learn about AI and the laws and whatever it is. So hi everyone.
Awesome. So you're in the right space. You're in the Curious Circuits meetup group. So it aligns very well with your curiosity. So hopefully your curiosity will be addressed over here in this call. So I'll quickly. So that's pretty much it with our audience intro. So I'll quickly tell a little bit more about Joy based on like what I have seen, Joy, in your LinkedIn profile. So you have completed your BA in economics from Harvard University, Doctor of Law, Harvard Law School. You have done you have an extensive experience in this legal space. So currently you are a business technology, entertainment and licensing attorney, law office of Joy Butler. So I believe this is your own organization. And then earlier you had a long history of expertise and experience in this industry. So I'll stop over here. So Joy, if you want to give a little bit of your introduction and also
Sure. Let me just give a little more context for some of the comments I'll have this evening. So yes, you're right. I am a Harvard Law School attorney. In my work, I provide a combination of strategic business and legal advice, primarily to companies that are in the digital technology and the entertainment space. So a lot of what I do is help my clients either develop or refine business models for new products or new markets that they're planning to enter. So for example, a client might say, well, we want to launch this new product. Does it trigger any copyright or licensing concerns? And if it does, how can we resolve them? Or they might ask a question about, given the dynamics of the market right now, what's the best way to structure our relationships with our customers, vendors, and other partners? So it is the copyright and the licensing issues within the generative AI realm that are of most interest to me and that I've spent a lot of time looking into.
perfectly. So this is beautiful, right? So let's get started. I think we have some very exciting things that we are going to discuss. So I'll start off with my being a technologist, like what I am seeing over here, and then maybe like I'll lead with some questions. And Joy, if you have, do you have any content prepared that you want to share, or it will be a more like an informal discussion? How do you want to take this forward?
It can be a mix. I did come up with some points I wanted to go over.
So let's do that first. Yeah, let's go through like what you have to share, and then that will lead to more questions. And feel free, Jeremy.
It can be a conversation too.
Yes.
So I know one of the first things you asked me about was how generative AI is being used in entertainment and media today. So, as a lot of people in this audience probably already know, with generative AI software that's available right now, you can take text prompts, sometimes prompts in other media, and you can create, articles, you can create video, music, images. So there are lots of opportunities for that to be used within the entertainment industries. I'm going to give you a couple of specific examples I think are interesting. One is vocal cloning, which can be used in both bad ways and good ways. So, like the bad way would be the Joe Biden deep fake we saw around the presidential primaries telling people not to come out to vote. So the much better use would be like the business model of this company called Flawless. Now, what Flawless does, they have this generative AI technology that provides this seamless dubbing of film and television. So they actually take the voice of the original actor and they put it into whatever the foreign language is. And then they modify the facial and the mouth movement of the original actor so that the dialogue and the movement are actually matching. It's also, much faster, much more seamless, and could make people more accepting of, film and television that's not in their native tongue. Another really good example would be digital replicas and synthetic characters, which again can be used in very bad ways and, better ways. So like the very bad ways would be like some of the revenge porn and the Taylor Swift situation we saw a couple of months ago. A better application, arguably better anyway, would be, you can have a digital replica to replace an actor who's no longer available because maybe the actor is deceased or the actor is sick, or it's just faster to do retakes with the digital replica. The digital replica technology is used to de-age actors. And of some concerns to actors, though, of course, is, producers might use like digital replicas or synthetic characters to replace actors, making fewer jobs for them. So, for example, if you are a producer and you need 100 background actors, you might decide to, give 40 of those to, a synthetic character. So I was started out by talking about how text can be turned into image, video, music, etc. But what's interesting is most professionals within media and entertainment, they are not using generative AI product in output in their final products. They're using it for storyboarding, for first drafts, for proof of concept. And that's very much because of all the copyright concerns that surround generative AI, which is my segue into another topic you wanted to discuss. But I'll give you a chance to ask any questions there.
So this is beautiful, right? So basically, I had one interview a couple of weeks back where someone cloned himself and they were asking questions to each other, right? So basically, it's so easy. And you mentioned like Flawless, but there are other technologies like 11 Labs is one of them. Most likely you have heard it. Hygiene is one of them where you can do face cloning. 11 Labs, you can do voice cloning, mix everything together, put it in an infrastructure. So now I might not be even the actual Ujjwal Bhattacharjee that you're talking to, right? It might be the clone. What is the legal impact, right? I mean, where is the industry going towards? And you mentioned like people, the industry is not actually able to use this technologies in production. Maybe they're using it for.
I didn't say they're not able to use it. They choose not to use it in their final products because of some of the copyright issues and other issues surrounding it. So let me talk about that a little bit. So first of all, there's been like a lot of controversy about how AI companies are training their models. So basically, a lot of companies have just kind of scraped the internet and they've used that material without getting consent from the right owner and without providing compensation to the rights owner to put into their data sets and train their models. So a lot of controversy over whether that is legal. Um, and so what's happening is there have been a lot of lawsuits filed against these AI companies over whether or not that's permissible or whether or not they actually need to get consent and pay a fee. And that's from all corners of the creative industry. We have like image, who is it? It's Getty Images has sued Stability AI, text of New York Times also suing OpenAI. All the major music companies are now involved in a lawsuit against text to music companies Udio and Suno. What's missing from this list, interestingly, is there are no major film and television production companies right now suing the AI companies. So there's the question of the data set. There are other copyright questions too. There are copyright questions around the output that's actually generated. So, for example, suppose you put a text prompt and you get an image as the output, but it is very similar to an existing work. So similar that it infringes the copy work of this existing work. And maybe there are, identifiable people in that image, so identifiable that there's some questions about whether or not that person's right of publicity has been infringed. So if there are copyright infringement questions and publicity questions, who's responsible for that? Is it you as the person who put in the text prompt to generate the output? Or is it the, AI company that provided the software? So that's an unsettled question of, copyright law. Another question or issue, at least in the United States, if you have a work or content that is wholly created by machine or by generative AI, it is not eligible for copyright protection. So the Copyright Office also tells us that, well, if it's a combination of, human creativity and machine creation, then okay, it may be eligible for copyright protection, but where that dividing line is uncertain. And professional companies that are putting money and resources into producing content, they want to be able to protect it. So that's another reason they're not using generative AI in their final products.
Very interesting. So basically, you're saying I use generative AI a lot, and I, as a individual, I can say that it has improved my productivity. So, for example, before generative AI and after generative AI, there's a huge change for me because I'll give you an example, right? I have been thinking about like starting a podcast for a very, very long time, maybe years now. But since we have generative AI, it just made it so easy. For example, like I was thinking about like a name, like what can be a good name, and I used to spend so much time with generative AI. Now, Curious Circuits was a name that was actually suggested by ChatGPT. Now, coming back to the logo of the Curious Circuits, generated by generative AI, right? So on and so forth. Editing, I use generative AI a lot. So my question is like, I know like these big players, the big companies have bigger impact, but then generative AI has helped individuals to kind of like go to the next step and take the next step boldly without, I always do a, version check or grammatical check with all these tools. And so that now I'm kind of confidently can go ahead and post in LinkedIn. I'm not worried about like, did I make any grammatical mistakes or not? So the question is, if I can use this generative AI successfully in this particular domain that I am in, maybe there are more people using it and there will be more proliferation to it. So that's the positive side of it. But then on the negative side, if someone comes back and says, hey, this logo is my, it was copied from, see, I have built this particular type of images in the last 10 years. Now I'm suing you. So is that even a possibility? I think you mentioned that typically it is not, but so should I be okay? Like, what is your thought process?
Okay, so I'm not going to give any legal advice.
No, 100%. Yeah. No, this is not the
during this
forum.
webinar. But a couple of interesting points that you mentioned, like using AI for ideation, like finding new names and helping you think more broadly. That may be like a safer use of AI. And definitely one of the things I do in my work is like all about risk minimization, which is what we want to do. What are ways to like minimize that risk? And I can give a few more specific examples for risk minimization as we talk this evening. I would say, some like light editing, especially for grammatical things and structural things, that might be on the safer side of a use for AI, even if you're publishing it. Generating your logo, well, yeah, that's more problematic because then we're getting into, is that infringing anyone's trademark or copyright?
That's what I was like wondering as well. Srinivasa, you have some question.
Yeah. There are two thoughts that came into my mind spontaneously to your points. I do use them the same way you are using. And I echo what you said, how it made the technology's life easier. Coming back to the main point, what I'm doing is that after generative AI creates the text script, right? I put them in Grammarly. I have a paid version of the Grammarly. And then the Grammarly checks for plagiarism. If that particular thing is anywhere copyright or anything, it will provide the link. You can copy and paste it at the bottom references. You can mention that, or you can select the entire text and right click and regenerate the verbase. It will regenerate for you. And you keep on checking the plagiarism, making sure that you don't use the same text as is. Somewhere it is in a blog or someone's article or anything like that, published research paper or anything. That's one on the text part of it. And then the image part, suppose you generate a logo, right? What you do is that go to Google image identifications, right? You can put any picture and it scans the picture and it says that, oh, what this picture is about. So what happens is that upload the picture and see, it identifies it from its data bank and other things. If anywhere in the world, if that picture or similar picture is there, it will spit, oh, this looks like a Disney logo. Oh my God, okay, Disney has already generated a similar thing. And you can search online and see, let the Google image identifier search for you. If any similarities is there, does it identify anything for you? Similarities between you and the existing images. That is one smart way of using identification of your image. That may minimize your risk. And always make there are certain I was running my graphic design company in India, based out of Hyderabad, and we were designing logos for the people. That was our bread and butter, graphic designing, leaflets, flyers, and all those things. The main thing is that if you have a logo, you change the color, it's different. They cannot file thing. There is a circle, and the circle is not a perfect circle. It's slightly oval. It's a different design. It's not copyright. So there are so many rules there, which you can always fight, saying that mine is different. Because in this world is so big. Everyone, somewhere the creativity can match to a certain extent. Even though yours is own genuine on your own or your AI generated, sometimes it matches unknowingly, knowingly, or for some reason there is some match between the creative thoughts. because the basic reason, fundamental concepts of a logo design depend upon your business, your thoughts behind your objectives, goals, keeping on all these things. A person designs the logo, a creative person. Even if I design by taking money from you a logo, it can still. I
Yeah,
am in a
exactly.
room using software, and I am a arts person. I do creative artist, and I do design a logo even on a paper. It happened to us practically in few times when I was doing designing in India. I designed right from scratch with my graphic designer artist, and when I went to showed that it was so very near to a famous logo design, I got shocked. Oh my God! Then I told him I did.
Because that's how your brain is trained, right? And even the AIs are trained with content from all over the internet.
Yeah,
Brain is also trained from the
yeah.
content over the internet, or by reading books, or by looking at designs. Or I mean, like, we cannot produce anything just out of the blue, right? We always have to have some reference. So whether it's AI or whether it's brain. I know, Jeremy, you have some questions or comments?
Just an observation. So recently I went to the Adobe Create Now conference that they held in Philadelphia. And it was basically a chance for Adobe to talk about a lot of their new AI integrated tools. And this was about, I think 2 months ago. And I think they've even improved those tools since then. But they gave a demo of a lot of the different ways that you could either take an image that you've created and then add AI to it, or start from scratch and create an AI image and then edit it from there. And one of the things that they focused on was how their system is now keeping track of everything that's AI within that image. And somehow they're going to be able to audit those images and be able to prove what was AI, what was not. And this was right before they made a change to their licensing, which caused a whole lot of concern across the internet about about Adobe having access to your images, stuff that you would normally think that they didn't have access to. Now they were going to have access to it. And I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. If we want them to have the ability to prove what's AI and what's not, they're going to need access to that information. What they're going to do with that information later is also a question mark, but it's sort of like you can't have it both ways. So I'm just curious if anybody else has thoughts on that.
I have not used that particular feature of Adobe. It looks interesting. I will try that one, and probably I can. I don't know how to circle back here. Is there a group here?
I'll share. So we have a group created. So okay. So going back to the actually topic of the day. So Joy, so good discussion. So now I'll quickly touch upon a few of the other things that we had.
Just one point. I don't want people to leave the group with this thought. So I can't read that name. Srinivasa's remarks about trademarks, some of the recommendations he provided, that would be a good strategy to perhaps knock out some potential trademarks that you wanted to use, but at least for US purposes, as an attorney helping someone with a trademark, I would not be satisfied with that level of a search, or I gave it okay for the adoption of a particular trademark.
Yep. So we'll move to the next topic of industry and government responses to generative AI. So there has been like so much discussion going on around. For example, I heard California has created a AI Act where they're going to prevent further AI development, and Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, they are kind of like opposing that, because especially Meta, they are trying to propose or force to, or like push towards more open source models that everyone can start using. So where is it going towards, and how is legal kind of like catching up? The industry is moving so fast, right? So it's very difficult to even catch up. Do we have enough rules and regulations, compliance laws created also?
Right. So I'll split that up into an industry response and the government response. So the industry response has been either we're going to fight them, or we're going to join them or at least consider joining them. And in the fighting stance, it's been like all those lawsuits I just talked about that the industry is fighting against AI companies that are still pending. A lot of those industry players, they're participating in some of the regulatory proceedings that are ongoing and like taking a look at AI. On the joining them crowd, I think probably due to a lot of those lawsuits, AI companies are moving more towards licensing more of the data that's going into their training data sets. And they have had success in getting licensing agreements with rights owners who have very large catalogs in very successful in publishing and in text and with images. With music, none of the major music companies have entered into licensing agreements with them, but a lot of production music libraries and library music has entered into those. Like, again, missing from this group are television and film production companies, because the issues there surrounding ownership and guild issues are much more complicated in terms of whether they could license. Then on the government's issue in terms of what their response has been, what I've been following most closely, again, is aligned with like copyright and with licensing. And the areas I've been looking at are the government sort of initiative to minimize any harm from the deep fakes, which includes like a lot of misinformation. And then also their steps towards, I guess, promoting more transparency and accountability from the AI companies. So in the space around deep fakes, one of the things that the government has done, they've tried to expand and clarify the whole concept of publicity rights. So in the United States, we don't have one federal publicity law. Each state has its own approach to publicity laws. And sometimes those laws are only going to cover you if you're a celebrity or you've commercialized it. So if your issue is like some sort of revenge porn, like those laws aren't going to cover it. So there are some proposed laws at the federal level to kind of expand and clarify what those protections are, and to especially extend them to protecting a person's voice. And on the issue of so on that issue, like Tennessee has passed like the Elvis Act that takes that step. There's some proposed law at the federal level which will probably not pass this year because there's some other political stuff going on this year. And in terms of making AI companies a little more transparent, there's been this push to make them disclose exactly what is in your data set. So the EU Act, which has been passed, and that's going to be implemented over the next couple of years, that's definitely taking that step. If you're a U.S. company who's going to be governed by that act, which would be the case if you're engaging at all with people in the EU. And for the United States, there have also been some proposed legislation which would require AI companies to file a list of their data set content with the Copyright Office, which again, probably won't pass this year. But it's a harbinger of what ideas are out there and what people are pushing towards. There's also been like a lot of attention around making sure creators whose material is used by AI are actually being paid for that.
So how are they going to track them? Like maybe social media has the ability to kind of like track, because I know like if I upload a content in social media with some well-known music, Google, YouTube, and all those things are able to track and kind of like
with Content ID.
Yeah. With content ID, I do not know. Somehow they track it. So based on the content itself, they'll analyze the content and they'll say, hey, there is a copyright. But earlier they used to block the content. But right now, I do not know what happens behind the scene. But it seems like they allow the copyright content, but somehow, somewhere gets a royalty. I do not know how this royalty works. But that's what I've seen. Like earlier, they used to block. But if you have a copyright, but now they just allow it.
That's a slightly different issue. I mean,
Okay.
some parallels though. I mean, but what you're talking about is, blocking material online that is infringing. And sometimes they have content ID systems and they find some media that is commercialized and you don't have permission to use it. They might monetize it. And that can be at the option of the rights owner, which is why sometimes it does go up. So the parallels to what we're talking about right now, generative AI, they are developing more tools to identify and tag what material is, generative AI. And that's often used in or envisioned to be used in the context of identifying misinformation.
Very, very interesting. How are they going to track it? I do not know the technology or the methods that they're going to use, but I'll come back to a very interesting question. So there was one question if someone was asking me that, okay, suppose an image is generated by ChatGPT or music clip is generated by Suno AI. But then if I just play that music and record it and then upload it, is it my content or their content? How is Google or whoever it is going to track the source of like if I just create a wall between the generated content and the actual content that is uploaded, right? So basically what I'm saying is like I take the generated content, get it into my brain and then recreate that same music and then upload it. Is it considered generated? Or is it like
the law is an onion? Lots and lots
it's like
of layers.
a layer after layer.
And that question has a lot of layers. I mean, first of all, and I'm not going to go into all of them in detail.
Right,
First of all, it's the question of, Chat GPT gave me, content that was infringing, but gave me music that was infringing, but I played it myself. Well, if it's the same composition, then that's still infringing. And I think your other question was, well, how is that going to be identified? So
how will that be identified?
Right. Those are the lot of the technologies that are being worked on. So there are many startups right now that are in the space of trying to authenticate content and, tag content that is generated by AI.
And also for finding, like not only identifying whether it's generated by AI or not, and then the next step is like which AI.
The next step is what?
Which AI made it, and then where it was.
Provenance.
Right.
So, right, that's another issue too. So, all startups aren't doing all steps. So, some startups will just say, okay, there's an 80% chance here that this is generative AI, which might be like very important to, for example, a news organization. But there could also be, sort of legitimate reasons that there might be some generative AI in that picked up by that technology. Because I was just talking about, flawless and about de-aging actors. So, that technology might flag those instances as well. So a lot of the technology companies that are providing the tagging of generative AI, they're not taking the position of, okay, generative AI, it's good, it's evil. It's kind of up to you to decide. They're just notifying you that there's generative AI in this material. You mentioned the issue of provenance, and I think Jeremy, his issue touched on this as well. Provenance being, okay, if we have generative AI how are we going to kind of trace it back and see
Right.
what material went into it? Another issue being worked on by people in the content authentication technology space, and that type of provenance will likely be necessary to do things like, you generated output, right? And in media, we go through this process called rights clearance to make sure any media you're using is not infringing anyone's copyright or infringing anyone's trademark or publicity rights. Well, if you don't know the source of the material that you have, you can't do that analysis. So as an if we get more of a provenance history of each piece of generated output, then the users could do that analysis.
Very, very interesting and complex area. I'll touch upon a couple of other things, but you mentioned about EU Act, right? The European Union Act.
Oh, the EU Act.
EU Act, and it's a little tongue twister. And the US.
It's EU.
EU.
You say each letter. Yeah. The EU Act.
So where is the difference? Like, what is EU trying to do or European Union trying to do, and what is like US trying to do, and like how is it different, right? Typically, always hear that European Union is more stricter, whether it's pharmacy or whatever. So how is it different right now? Because I've heard a lot about this act. People are saying that US is not as close.
I think there are a lot of similarities in goals. I think what many countries are trying to do is, as I said, get more transparency from the AI companies and diminish any negative impact artificial intelligence can have on society. One of the big differences at this point is the European Union has actually passed something to try to get that done, whereas the United States right now is still looking at the issue and trying to determine how it's going to come about it. So the EU Act is going to be slowly implemented, and it's going to be similar to like the European version of data privacy, some similarities there.
Right.
Companies that you have a presence within the European Union or are engaging with citizens of the European Union are going to need to comply with those terms.
Interesting. Question about watermarking. I have heard that there is a thing called AI watermarking, which is a process that adds a unique signal or watermark to any output that is generated by artificial intelligence. Do you know like how, what is the impact, and from a legal standpoint, like do you have any checks and balances for watermarking?
So it's not really a legal question. But what watermarking can do is, again, help you track that provenance or help you identify a material that's being misused in some way, and then pursue that from a legal and business perspective.
So basically, my question was more towards when you mentioned like there are startups, right, who are actually getting into this space and then trying to specialize and giving those data to the legal counsel so that they can do their work, right? So basically,
no,
not really. Okay. Let me rephrase my question. So my question rather would be like, okay, these startups specialize in identifying the influence of generative AI in the content, and maybe that becomes the foundation for, if there is a lawsuit or something like that, that becomes a foundation for.
Well, I was talking about two different things. So first, we were talking about like tagging something as generative AI.
Correct. So let's say this startup does that for you, for anyone. So for me, I'm trying to say that, okay, Jeremy stole my music, right? Whatever it is, right? or this music composition that I have done, someone is coming back and suing me that, okay, you have stole my music, right? Whatever. So now I take my music to the startup. I'm just trying to think about like a workflow. So I take this music to this other startup who can identify whether there is generative AI content or not. So they tag it, saying that yes, there is a chance that this content might have an influence of generative AI. Then what happens?
So, I mean, the use cases have really been more along the lines of like the news media, for anti-fraud issues. So let's not conflate the topics of tagging something as having generative AI content within it, versus what is the provenance of a particular output. So it's the latter that would be, I think, more helpful to someone filing a lawsuit, or to someone making sure that no lawsuit was going to be filed if they wanted to use that output. So I think the tagging something as generative AI, having generative AI content is more geared to flagging misinformation, or reviewing content more closely to make sure that there's no misinformation there, and also for fraud.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Going to the next topic, which is more about like algorithmic bias and fairness. So there was some very interesting conversation, Joy, that I was in. I was talking to one of a creative producer, or a creative artist rather, and he was showing how he can use Midjourney or any other tool, Stable Diffusion, etc., to create pictures. And also, as you mentioned, right, take a reference, create or regenerate bunch of them out of that, right? So the prompt was something similar, like something very simple: generate an image of an Indian woman, and it generated that stereotype Indian woman. So there was a lot of bias in that, right? Because India is a very, historic country with so many thousands of years of evolution. So from region to region, uh, people, language, and eating habits, and the look and feel, everything changes, right? So when I say Indian woman, it doesn't mean anything to me, because North Indian versus South Indian, East and West is like so different. So similarly, if I say American woman, it doesn't mean anything, right, as such to me, but then because it can be a Asian woman, it can be a black woman, it can be a white woman, doesn't matter, right? Just saying American woman doesn't mean anything. But if I look at ChatGPT, and if I go and say Indian woman or an American woman, it will generate a very stereotypical image. Is there anything like any? I have heard there are a lot of legal issues around this particular topic. So what happens if some company? I know, like you already covered this, because companies are not using this in production. Rather, they're using it for the storyboarding to create artifacts that eventually goes out. So there is always a human in the loop. But if someone takes a picture and puts it uh, in the social media or somewhere, what is the impact, and like how do they deal with it? And it's a long question. It's all over the place. Yeah.
With a lot
Very
of
low.
layers to the onion.
Lot of
Okay,
layers.
so companies and entertainment are using generative AI as an intermediate phase, first draft, storyboard, due to copyright concern, right? So primarily, different topic that we could spend a whole hour on, dealing with bias,
Yeah.
right? And AI being used in discriminatory ways. So a lot of the bias comes in with predictive artificial intelligence as opposed to generative artificial intelligence. But I mean, I mean, this is another topic within artificial intelligence more broadly that like the global community and the US community are talking about. So, I mean, what I can say about that is, whatever biases we have in the world, right, they're going to make their way into artificial intelligence. So there are definitely people studying up how do we get like more voices into the conversation to make sure artificial intelligence more fairly like kind of represents society. So I hope
that's a very important point, right? So artificial intelligence is nothing magic. It's coming from the real world. So maybe the bias already exists in the real world, right?
right.
So,
And then like who's creating artificial intelligence? Like what's the majority there? There have definitely been studies about, like facial detection within artificial intelligence. It's very skewed by race and by gender. So these are all issues to be worked on.
Interesting. There was one question from, I think there are like a bunch of them, right? So, recording be shared. Okay, will the recording be shared? Yes, the recording will be shared. Yes, videos are posted later. Composition versus master requirement production, all parts of the onion. Okay. I have to leave meeting. I have a question regarding tools that can be used for biological research with some accuracy in the information from published article to make decision rather than reading so
We
many.
need to look at the chat.
Hi,
Go ahead.
Joy. That was from me. Actually, I don't know much about like AI. As I mentioned in the beginning, my interest to join this meeting was like, is there any tools more accurate where I can just put the information like this is what I'm looking for, and AI can pull the information from all the published research article and give me a summarized information. So let's say I'm a biologist, right? So I do a lot of research and labs based role. My lab based role, like I have to do a lot of experiments, and sometimes we read a lot of articles, published papers, and it takes a lot of time. Sometimes I just want to ask quick questions to AI and say, "Oh, what media can I use, or what I can use for my scientific research?" And then AI can pull the information from all the published paper and give me summarized information like point by point, and I can use that information to speed up my research. Basically, I think that's totally different and irrelevant information from this meeting. But I was like really curious to know if there are any tools available that can speed up my research. Basically,
I'll ping you. So are you on LinkedIn or something?
yes, I'm on a LinkedIn as well. My name on LinkedIn is Hetal Patel. So I'll leave this meeting, but that was the reason I really wanted to, join.
Go ahead. There are a lot of tools out there, and I'll ping you. So if you can send me a LinkedIn connection invite, I can send you all the.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Okay, cool. So we talked about bias, fairness, misinformation, harassment. This kind of like falls under the same category, right? So all this generative AI and predictive AI concerns. So that's good. I just wanted to open up. I know like few new people have joined, Swami and Daniel. If you guys have any questions specific on this particular topic, feel free to ask Jeremy, Srinivas. Anyone has any other questions for Joy?
No, I'm not the lawyer. Just listening to the technologist looking to help lawyers. So.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Here we go.
I only had one question because I went to a networking event tonight and somebody mentioned it. For those that are doing the in-between technology, so let's say wireless networks or networking companies that are enabling generative AI to take place, what liability will we see on them when something goes wrong, maybe on a larger scale? Have we seen any precedents in that sense?
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you give me an example of what service that they're providing?
So company A hires company B to handle their wireless networks. and the wireless networks are what's being used to communicate to an LLM and do all of the number crunching. Let's say there's some kind of problem that goes down with the generative AI and somebody gets sued. What role does that network provider have in that whole equation, since they're enabling the technology?
Okay. So, I mean, just very generally, I would say it depends what the contracts say. And like, number two, I would back up and ask, so has it just impacted the people who are in that chain, the companies in the chain and the customers that they're serving? Or is it a like wider, more catastrophic event? Like in that case, maybe potential liability opens up. But if it's more contained, I would say you start by looking at the contracts.
Yeah, I think from what I'm understanding, this isn't my area of expertise, but it seems like this is a concern by some of these networking companies, and they're trying to figure out how do they write their contracts to get themselves out of any liability in these situations.
Right.
Cool.
Right. It's in the contracts.
Yeah. It all comes down to that.
What have you signed for? Okay, cool. So I know generative AI is impacting every industry. So today, we have added like Copilot into our products pretty much. So our software development has like grown multiple, the speed of the software development has grown. What is the impact of generative AI in legal industry, right? So
Yeah. So the legal industry, that's another industry that some people fear, not necessarily generative AI, maybe more combination of predictive AI and generative AI. Like you can just need fewer hands. For example, like if you have to like go through a lot of documents, it can like speed that process up for you for due diligence. It can, generative AI for drafting contracts and potentially drafting briefs or giving you a head start on that. But the thing is today, generative AI tends to hallucinate. So you have to have like some human involvement in any writing to check and make sure everything is correct. But it can sometimes give you, a very good first draft.
AI Advocate is a company, it's a startup company that I was like talking to a few months back. They shared some content of like how they are trying to build generative AI bots. Do we think that like in the future, just like we see in the advertisements that robots are doing the operations and replacing doctors, do we really think that people are going to trust AI bot to do a legal, fight for them? Like, is it even a possibility?
I'll open that up to your audience in terms of what they think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a more opinionated best, but I don't know. Like, beyond a point, I think like I'll trust a human being because they'll have that accountability. I do not know. Like,
So, I mean,
there is,
as it stands now for like important tasks, artificial intelligence is good for speeding up your workflow and
research and all that.
making you more efficient.
Mhm.
But there should always be human intervention.
Yeah, the human
And-
factor
yeah.
has to be there all the time. Yeah, otherwise, machine will create the contract and machine will come back and sue the contract, right? So that's what you were saying, right? Created the contract even, and who signed it, and then who is creating that lawsuit. I think that's pretty much it. We are almost at time. Srinivas, you have some question?
Yeah, just answering the last and final use case you mentioned, right? My exposure to the AI world and other things, at this moment, there is no human replacement for sure. whether you take coding, whether you take driving, which driving is pretty much on the road already. We can see cars in California running without human driver, and there are some places they are running cars already without humans. They are running taxis, but it's still a long way to go. And humans, and there are so many things, whether humans does or AI does. Law, meeting the law is always to be re-verified, rechecked, and lot of complexity is there in the actual implementation and everything, which we do a lot of checks and balances when humans does. And because number one, the data is not there where a machine can take decision. Humans suggest
Machines are already taking decisions, right? I mean, if cars are running on the road without any driver, the machines are already taking decisions. So maybe, I mean, like in the future, maybe like cars, I send my car out to Wegman to buy groceries, where there are robots who delivers the groceries. The car comes back and meets an accident, and then the judge is also a robot who decides on behalf of everyone. So let them settle down. We are at home safe and watching movies, something like that. Is that the future? I do not know. So all the problematic situations, like let robots deal with it. I don't know.
Yeah, that is possible, and it's on the way to that state. And it has to go. It has to go through vigorous processes, and law is one of them. And still, human intervention is required. Human checks and balances are to be verified, and they need to be updated from time to time. There should be a system where the new rule doesn't break old rule. A lot of complex situations will be there. Let's see how the systems will be built over a period of time, because car industry has moved much far ahead than few industries. Like for example, you take the case of space, right? Space implemented artificial intelligence long back. They landed so many devices and vehicles unmanned into the space area before even it comes to the earth, right? So we have some history of it. A lot of challenges are there, especially running with the public. Very interesting topic. This, if we keep talking, it will be endless. Everyone has a use
Yeah.
case where there are. Yeah.
I think we are already at time. Last, any comments, Joy, before we wrap up?
Yeah, well, just say generative AI is really fascinating. It's probably going to progress. The law will eventually catch up. Till that time, there are a bunch of things people can do to minimize the risk that goes with it. Already talked about not really using it as your final product. There might be a lot of individuals on this call, so I'll mention some things individuals can do. Like if you are a freelancer and someone calls on you get commissioned for a project and you want to use generative AI in that, I'll say number one, think about the fact that generated AI content is not eligible for copyright. So if the person who hired you is expecting material that they can protect by copyright, you need to be aware of that and gauge how it's going to impact the product you're producing. And that could be for code, for a newspaper article, for images, for anything. The other thing I'll mention for freelancers and for potential employees, if you're creating, content and it's being commissioned, you might want to think about whether or not you want that delivered content to be used to train AI in the future. Part of what I'm seeing in the industry are all sorts of creative people, and from entertainment to coding to performers, they're putting AI training carve out terms in their contracts. So I'll leave it at that.
That's very interesting. So we use generative AI to create content. That content, the thousands and thousands of them, now feed back into the AI network to train the model. It creates a mess out there. Is that something?
Yes. And there are two issues there, right? Like if you're a freelancer creating content, did you use generative AI, and were you allowed to under the terms of your contract? But then, yeah, once you hand in that content, whether it includes generative AI or not, are you okay with that content then being used to further train artificial intelligence?
Awesome. That's opened up a lot of interesting thoughts. I'll wrap this up because we are already over time. Thank you so much, Joy, for your time.
Well,
and
thank you for inviting me
everyone-
to speak.
No,
Yeah.
this is my pleasure, and I'm blessed to have such really great speakers over here. And I and also like taking the time out after the day's work and attending over here. So thank you, Jeremy, and thank you, Srinivas, asking some good questions. Thank you, everyone, as such, for participating in this discussion.
Oh, and I'll just mention one more thing. I see like one or two people did have questions. So you can always find me on LinkedIn or at joybutler.com.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye bye. Good night.